Welcome to this podcast is making me thirsty, the number one destination for Seinfeld fans. This is episode 105. Today's guest is a veteran actor of TV and film. You know him from Dr. Doolittle 2, Everybody Loves Raymond, King of Queens, American Dad. And of course, he played Dr. Wexler in 4 Seinfeld episodes. Please welcome Victor Raider-Wexler. Victor, thanks for joining.
Very welcome. I wasn't always Dr. Wexler, though.
Right, that's true. We ran over this at the beginning. When I say both your names in the intro, I said, I'm just saying Wexler in the intro. We'll talk about it.
That's because they forgot what they called me. So they.
Oh, of course, we remember you as Dr. Siegel
Yes.
from the Junior Mint. So take us back. March of '93, the Junior Mint aired on NBC. Obviously, you've had an incredible career up towards to that point. But tell us a little bit how that role came about. Obviously, season 4 of Seinfeld, kind of the peak of the show. Tell us a little bit about the audition process and how you got that role.
Yeah, happy to. First, I will say that I had a New York career at that point, and I was always frightened to go out to LA because, you know, in New York, even though I had a car, I left it home. I took the subway everywhere. I walked everywhere. And the idea of being on freeways and everything was foreign to me. So I didn't go. But then I got a play that went to LA called 6 Degrees of Separation. People might have heard of it. So we went and we settled in LA, and there I was. And my agent in New York had a West Coast office. And I said, I want television. And they said, no, we don't send stage actors out for television because they'll want you to book you for something and you'll say, I'm sorry, I have a show that night or whatever. So we don't do it. Another guy in my production of 6 Degrees of Separation got a television show, Sam Stonebrunner. And I went ballistic. I said, what's your agent's name? His agent was Harry Gold. I fired the West Coast office of my agency and asked Harry Gold to represent me. Well, when they told the East Coast office that I had fired them, the East Coast went a little bit, because I was a good client on the East Coast. They said, get him back. So they reluctantly sent me up for, they sent me up for Wonder Years. And I booked it. So all of a sudden, you know, which was just kind of amazing. So now I had some credibility. And they said, if I would leave the tour of 6 Degrees of Separation and come back, they would get me some television work. So we finished LA, which was a 3-month gig, and we did San Francisco for a month. And I left the tour and I came back to LA, and they set me up for Seinfeld. Seinfeld in those days, the audition process was they'd have 6 guys or 7 guys there, and they'd weed you out. They'd take you in and you'd come out and they'd say, thank you. And then they'd take you out and they'd say, could you hang around a little while? And the next guy, could you hang around? Oh, thank you. And then there's 3 of us. And then we went back in until I was the only one left standing. And so that's how I got it. And then I went in, met the cast, did a little read through of the scene because there was no script or anything up till that point. And then they said, do you know our show? And I didn't know Seinfeld at all. And they said, let's give you a few episodes so you get the gist of it. And they gave me the Chinese restaurant and the bet. They gave me 4 episodes, I remember, and I took them home that night. So we watched for 2 hours. We sat and we watched an old beta, you know, the old video.
Yeah.
We watched them. It was pretty exciting. So then I went in. I thought, oh, this is going to be a fun show. And tell me if I'm talking too loud because my problem is I don't shut up.
Perfect.
So came the scene where the Junior Mint is dropped, and my wife at the time was a med student in rotations, and she said that can't happen. In every operating theater in the United States, there's a glass partition there. Nothing could ever leave the gallery and get into the. And I said to Tom Sharonis, who was the director, that can't happen. And he went, and he said, he said, this moment of the falling mint, and he told me how it was going to be slow-mo and all that. That moment is going to make this show be from a hopeful to a bona fide hit right there at this moment. And you're going to be in it. So don't screw it up. And sure enough, that was true. That was the moment that Seinfeld became a hit, and I became a good luck charm at the same time. I'll tell you something else from that episode. I had a line that because they wondered why he recovered so miraculously, and my line was, I think it was something from above.
Yes.
And Julia,
Classic.
yeah, Julia broke up laughing. She just cracked up. She fell off so we had to set up and do it again. We did 23 takes. She never could not crack up. So we had to wait till the audience left and then do it without an audience there. And then we got, but it's not so funny. You know, it was really hilarious with the audience there on pins and needles about it. But that's that story about that episode. It seems to me there was, I mean, yeah, anyhow. Those are my tales of that first episode.
That line, something beyond science, something perhaps from above, is delivered so perfectly. In fact, all of your episodes, and we'll get to all of them, but you kind of have that same, they give you those lines throughout. It's one of those things, it's almost like they realized it, or I don't know if it was just the writing, but I mean, even in you know, in the Summer of George, you're like, with a little bit of luck, it's always very it gets not ominous, but it's very you know, the way you deliver those, like,
so
something
in
from
the
above.
Summer of George, I you know, that was aping the scene from the wedding invitations. It was supposed to be an echo.
Yes, it was like a connection.
I thought they didn't quite achieve it, and I said to Jason, Jason, I rewrote the scene a little bit. Look at it, see what you think. You know, privately at a table, and he said, "This is much better. This is much better." I said, "Can I give it to Larry?" He said, "Well, I'll just tell you one thing before you give it to Larry." He said, in the pilot episode, the waitress at the cafe was going to be a regular. She was going to be in every week, and she rewrote the scene and gave it to Larry, and we never saw her again. He said, "So do what you want." So I didn't give it to Larry.
Wow. That's a good one. You know, it's funny going back to the Junior Mint, and I believe it's your first time in the show. You're basically, your first thing you do is you look at Jerry when he showed you that yo-yo trick, and you just give him a look, and then sort of just like the look you give Jerry does like a yo-yo trick, and he shows it to you, and you kind of give him a look, and then you just like, I don't know, it's just a perfectly delivered like facial expression. I don't know if you remember it so vividly as I just rewatched the episode.
Watch the episode, so
it's incredible. Like I don't. Yeah, I don't know where you pulled it out of, but you did this like look at him like, because you know, Jerry, he's playing with a yo-yo. The guy's on his deathbed. You know, he's playing with a yo-yo. You just kind of look at him like, what the? And then you just go on and talk.
Well, the character became a character of incredulity the whole time, right up till the as a matter of fact, there was a 5th episode that never made it to the air, and but a lot of the stuff from the 5th episode wound up in the finale, and the reason was, after the wedding invitations, there was such an outcry from the public of how nasty and how mean and how thoughtless because that was where, you know, he's trying to make a date following finding out that his fiance is dead,
right?
And they did an episode to start the next season where I saw them on the curb of just was passing on the street, and I stopped and I dressed them down. You know, you had the most, and they were doing that as an apology to the audience for the outcry about the death of Susan. But before they aired it, the ratings spiked up again because all of that stuff in the TV Guide just gave them more and more viewership. So they yanked it because they didn't want to apologize. And so that was my good luck charm of it, you know, extending. I got very lucky. And also in that one, because
was that Victor? Was that season? So that was going to be season. Was that a new season, or was it like an extension off the finale of season 7?
The wedding invitations, I think, was the last show of a season, as I remember.
Right, 7.
This
Yeah,
was the first show of the next season, and it was really an answer to what was going on in TV Guide. With, I mean, people really said they hated it, that it was so callous about it. People liked Susan, you know. And you know, George is George, but it turned out that they didn't feel they needed to apologize, so they yanked it. But then they put a lot of the stuff back in my testimony when I was in the finale.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
And listen, I'm one of those guys. Actually, not at the time, I didn't mind it, but rewatching it now, 20, 25 years later, I didn't love the episode. But I'm curious your take, being the doctor who delivered that news. What was your thoughts on that episode of killing off Susan as you became a fan of the show? Clearly,
Well, yes, I loved doing that episode, and the thing was, Jason's timing I understood very, very well. Of everybody in the show, I got Jason's timing the best. So when we were just locking eyes and taking those pauses, and she's dead.
right?
She's dead. Yes. Well, it was just that thing going on. So I had a great time doing it, and I wasn't thinking of social implications at all. And I didn't know Susan very well. I was not a regular.
Right.
Killing Susan was not a big. I mean, I knew her from the dressing room on that episode. But it was not a big deal to me. I can get it later because I wasn't a great television watcher.
Right, and
New York, I barely watched television, and I was just trying to get into the TV business. By that time, I had hung, after I got Wonder Years in Seinfeld, I hung into Hollywood, and I think that IMDb says I did 150 episodes, and so eventually I started watching more television, but only a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny you talk about the chemistry with Jason. It's interesting in the Junior Mint, you and Jason met barely for like a hot second when he bought the paintings and you came in to give the speech about something staved off that infection, and that's when Jason kind of left, and it's like you guys crossed paths, and I thought about it, I'm like, wow, they crossed paths, just so interesting there. And then obviously the big scene,
But did you
moving
know
forward.
that how people don't quite get the importance of what's going on when you're doing it is that episode was not called Junior Mint. They renamed it the Junior Mint. That episode initially aired as The Artist. But the Junior Mint, as Tom Chironis predicted, became such a signal moment that they found it, and everybody called it the Junior Mint episode, so they renamed it.
Yeah, what's interesting is it's called the Junior Mint, but there's so much going on in that episode, right? But female body part, Mulva, the whole thing. I mean,
Yeah.
Take us back. So were you on set the whole time? Were you kind of?
And even that one, Dolores, I handed in an alternate because he yells Dolores.
Right.
I thought he should have said Regina or Regina. And he said no, they wouldn't do that.
Well, actually,
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
we had Ann Tallman on the show who actually dated Michael Richards, and the story has
I know Ann and I know Michael, and I didn't know they ever dated. Isn't that funny?
Yeah. So the story goes is they were looking for that name Dolores, just like you mentioned, rhyme with a female body part, blah, blah, blah. And she was in the crowd, and she actually recommended the name Dolores. I was just curious if you were on set. Can you confirm that story?
Well, she was married at that time. She wasn't.
No.
She was married to a friend of mine. I'm trying to remember his name. We all worked together at the O'Neill Center for the National Playwrights Conference. So I knew Ann, and at that point in that episode, I vaguely remember that by that time I was a recur, and she was just one of the many, and so I was being a benevolent friend, trying to show her around a little bit because she didn't have much standing at that time on the set, and I was emerging as having some standing on the set. I'll also tell you this, that in that Junior Mint, of course, I was a surgeon. Well, in the wedding invitations, I'm an emergency room doctor, not a surgeon at all. So they posted the casting call, and I called my manager and I said, why don't I have that role? And they said, well, because it's a different kind of a doctor. And I remember saying, so what? This is television. I was being brazen, and they gave it to me. And that's why they changed my name a little. They changed my name, and then they forgot what name I was, because I think the third episode, I think I was Dr. Gold, and then the finale, I was Dr. Wexler. But obviously, it was always the same guy.
Was that an ode to Harry Gold, your the old agent?
No, it was an ode to the fact that I was Dr. Silver in 6 Degrees of Separation.
Ah,
And by the way, that was Hollywood. The impetus for casting me was I was on stage in LA in a hit show, and I was a doctor. So, in
There
LA,
you go.
he does doctors,
Yeah, I mean,
LA is quirky that way.
the Junior Mint is a top episode of all time. And then it's you mentioned Tom Sharonis a few times when he was talking about the Junior Mint coming down. That was the only time you worked with him though, because your next three episodes was an Ackerman directed episode. But we're partial to the Sharonis years here. The seasons 1 through 5. I'm curious, when you went back 3 years later for the invitations, how much had changed on set as far as, the way things were handled. They were kind of a bigger show at that point. Ackerman's now the director. Although Larry David, I think, wrote the invitation, so he's probably involved a lot too, I'm assuming. But just curious if you could tell the difference coming into the invitations versus your first time on the show with the Junior Mint.
Absolutely could, and brought that home with me. And I always thought Sharonis was my kind of director, and that happened to me periodically in my career. That I'd have a director that I really, really loved. And do you remember David Steinberg? David Steinberg, comedian.
Yes.
Yeah. Just read his
I
book.
did a pilot episode of a show. I have to remember that. And Steinberg was the director of the pilot, and we loved him. He said, "This is the best television directing I've ever had." And then about 4 days before we shot the episode, he called the cast into the dressing room and he said, "I have to tell you, I was fired last night. Don't anybody get upset." And all that. And Rob, who I got to know very well, the replacement director, did all the rim shots and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't think that's not the way I like to go. So I was very, very fond of Sharonis, and I don't know what happened to him. I don't know why they let him go, or if he quit, or I have no inside information about Sharonis. You probably do.
yeah, we're trying to get the
We've
bottom
been trying
of
to
it.
get him on for a while.
I think it was just one of those things. A lot of Sharonis left, Larry Charles left after season 5. I think people went out to other things, but either way, Larry David was still a constant kind of on both.
And Larry Charles, later was a good buddy of Larry David's in Curb Your Enthusiasm. So, what I always thought was some kind of a split apparently wasn't a split. So
no, yeah.
I think
Yeah,
Charles had a production deal, so he just went with where that was going. He had he got a deal for his own show. That's why he left. Because they're still close. I mean, they just did a documentary on HBO together. So
I'm going to be in it. I'm in that.
Oh, you are in that?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Oh, nice.
Very cool.
Did you work on Curb or tell us a little about your relationship with Larry David. I'm just curious.
Well, when Curb came along, I certainly thought I would be called in, and the audition process for that was very different because there was no script.
Right.
And they like to throw it at you, but I would find a way or another, because I had friends on the inside, to find out what the episode really was before I got there, and kind of prepare stuff. And my auditions I always thought were killer. And Larry David would shake my hand and tell me what and then not cast me. And that happened a number of times. And we still parted friends, but he said, I always meant to cast you. I always wanted to, but he never did. And I always wanted to be in it, but I never got cast. It's why I eventually left Hollywood, by the way. I just couldn't stand those heartbreaks. My manager at the time, when I said I was going to leave Hollywood, said, "Victor, you're booking 1 out of 4, which is remarkable for a guest star person." And I said, "Lorraine, I'm not booking 3 out of 4. And that just upsets me every time I go home after one of those. There's just too much of my heart invested in all of them." So eventually,
that's
I have to, but my wife became a doctor, and got a residency in Kansas, and I followed her out.
Look at that, a doctor. It's just in your blood.
Yeah.
And listen, Victor Raider-Wexler shouldn't have to try it for anything. They should just put him on shows. That's what we think.
Well, that's what happened a lot. I became a recurrer also in King of Queens
King of Queens, yeah.
Loves Raymond, and so all those shows were coming along, and just getting a call and saying, we got an episode for you. But for the others, I still had to reach.
So for Seinfeld, obviously you were Dr. Siegel. You killed it on the Junior Mint.
Thanks for saying that.
And then of course. And then the callback you mentioned, like you kind of heard through the grapevine they were looking not for a surgeon but kind of an ER person. Like,
No, it was in the casting. Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't hear it. There was they were posted. They're looking for a doctor to be an emergency room doctor, and I saw they called the breakdowns. The breakdowns came out. I said, why don't I have that role? Well, because you're not a emergency room doctor. Well, let's go get it. And I had Lorraine Berglund was my manager at the time. She's passed away. She rests in peace. And she was up for those kinds of things. And Stephen Rice was my agent, and he loved those kinds of things, because he would lie at the drop of a hat and say why that made perfect sense, and he could sell it. I was the beneficiary, I was a lucky actor.
Yeah, and I mean, so you like O'Hara mentioned, you kill it on Junior Mint. They bring you back for invitations in Summer of George, and then the finale. So I mean, like you mentioned, I'm curious to see how that tied in, that unaired episode, dialogue or what have you, and then kind of you being on the finale. We've talked to a few guest stars who were on the finale, but I just want to get your take on the whole experience, seeing everyone there, the secretiveness of it, what it was like, kind of on set for that whole thing, and just kind of being a part of Larry David coming back and the whole shebang. I mean, it's TV history, that kind of thing.
Let me do that in a second, because I now recall, as we're talking, that episode I told you that I made that they never aired. But how they were able to cover that was there was an incident at the studio where somebody in our show, I think one of the other guest stars, parked in Rosanna Barr's or Tom Barr's parking spot, because we were in adjacent sound stages. And it got to be a big, huge deal about parking in my spot. And they threw together an episode about parking in somebody's spot that took the place of the one. I just remember that. It was really an echo of what was really going on. So now the finale, it was made into such a very, very big deal. And Larry David produced alternate scripts so nobody would really know what was going on. And he only gave us sides. So we only knew our little part. But I wound up sharing a dressing room with Terry.
Terry Hatcher.
Hatcher, yeah.
Oh, you poor thing.
I was in heaven,
How does that work?
Well, because I had been in Lois Clark, and we had gotten to know each other, so we just requested it, and so I thought, oh, how good can it be? And aside from that, and seeing the people, but it was especially Terry, and then the regulars. Jason was always very, very funny. Michael, as a matter of fact, when Seinfeld closed and he got his own show, Vic, as a private detective, Vic 70 Private Detective.
Yeah, sorry, you were on that, right?
Well, I was supposed to be on it. I got the job that I was on it, and I got there. And I said, I'm not in the script. I can't find myself in this script. And he said, I just want you in the show. We'll write some stuff. I just you kicked us off. You were a good luck talisman. My episodes happened to be the episodes that helped Seinfeld, and so he thought I would be the same for him. But my episode never made it to the air on that show. What was it, Vic? Somebody.
The Michael Richards show.
Yeah.
So speaking of Michael Richards, and we're going back to the Junior Mint here. We're sorry, we're flipping all over the place, but. I mean, I could see you like genuinely laughing on in that scene when you and Kramer are talking about, retractors and did you watch 2020 last night? And Kramer kind of doing his thing with the sawing the body. Like, I felt like you were really laughing. Was it like, I mean, how many takes did happen on that one?
Not so many. What happened was, do you all remember Fridays?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I had become a huge fan of Michael Richards on Fridays. I just thought he was, hysterically funny. So he would say good morning, and it would just tickle me. And the four regulars, had such different methods of working. I mean, they were nothing. You wouldn't think they would be compatible at all. Julia from Second City, or an actress, Michael, very physical, Jerry, a stand-up comic, and George, a legit, Broadway actor. And I just would marvel at watching them work off of each other. And I thought my job was to try to do the same thing, to work off of who I was talking to. So yes, you're right that I was just terribly amused by Michael Richards, but I thought that the Doctor could be too. I'm in rehearsal at the moment for a role where everything about my character is me, everything, and it's and I think, oh, what a blessing this is. I don't have to work at any of this stuff. I just get it totally, and that was it in that episode. I thought there were four amazingly funny people. Tom Sharonis was my director. I was not all that aware of Larry David. He was around.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about it too. Pretty much, I think all of your episodes, it was you and the four main in the scene. The invitations, they're all four there. When you're telling George the news, and in the Junior Mint, you're all in the room together. Same thing with Summer with George. It's kind of a throwback to the invitations, as you said. So you were with the four all together, which doesn't happen very often with a guest star in all of your episodes. So it's good to hear your take on that.
Jason is quite a raconteur. So when we're not shooting, he's sitting at a table and Jason's spinning stories of his life, and a wonderful storyteller. And the first person who befriended me on the set was Julia, who introduced herself and everything. She, as the time went by, became more distant. Michael was always Michael, and Jerry was one of the bosses. So, but I was happy to be near any of them at any moment.
Yeah, and I mean, you're obviously, like you said, a veteran, 150 shows. We kind of like to get a take on. You kind of just touched on it, but a little bit comparison. I mean, you were on, like you said, King of Queens. Everyone Loves Raymond. Both of those are kind of led by stand-up comics and were kind of big hits. Larry Sanders Show with Gary Shandling, I believe you were in. There's several. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of these shows, right? So. What is your takeaway? I mean, it sounds like you're always trying to learn your the art and the craft of acting, and what is your takeaway from your time on Seinfeld when you kind of go to these other shows and you kind of look around, you're like, wow, they're not doing it the right way, or maybe they're doing it differently, but it's still good, and that sort of thing. I mean, what did Seinfeld have that some of these others didn't, that made it so great to work on? Without disparaging anyone personally, obviously, not the shows. I don't mean that way, but
my first audience show was Kate and Allie, which I shot when I was still in New York. And of course, New Yorkers know what to do with a live audience, All in the Family, all this stuff. They know what a live audience is for. So when I came out to California, and they had no idea what the live audience was there for. They'd have a warm-up guy who would be doing magic tricks and things like that, and the whole audience would be totally involved in other stuff. And then you shut up, we're going to shoot a scene, and they would shoot, let's say, from 7 o'clock until 11:30 or 12 o'clock at night, because they were repeating scenes again and again. Like I told you, the Julia scene was 23 takes, none of which were ever used, but it would draw out the evening. In New York, if you didn't get it in 2 takes, you threw it away. They brought in a new audience and tried it again, and then if you didn't get it in the 4 takes with the 2 audiences, then you would do the shots afterwards. So I really queried that. But because we had Jason, and we had enough people that leaned into the audience, that I thought they understood it a lot better than others. because I did other shows, and
Right.
some of them you go, oh, you have this audience in the palm of your hand, and you disregard them utterly, like you're pretending that they're not there. Dharma and Greg, we would shoot from 7 until 2 in the morning, and the audience would be
Oh my gosh.
because they'd watch every scene 8 or 9 times and go, you don't know what to do with an audience. And the Seinfeld group did, clearly, and Larry David is pretty brilliant.
Right.
Yeah. And fun fact, I saw Dharma in the Louvre in Paris, France. But
Look at this guy, huh?
I just said I forgot her real name, so I just called her Dharma. But Victor, speaking of Seinfeld and talented people, you also worked with Carol Leifer on All Right Already.
Oh yeah.
Was there did you meet on the Seinfeld set? I'm curious how that kind of relationship started.
I don't remember how I got that was one of the easier ones. But by that I meant she knew me.
Right.
So that even though I auditioned, and I did audition, I always called that process the bridesmaid and the bride. And when I would go into an audition, I would know, they really want to use me and it's mine to lose, or they really want to use somebody else and I'm there to give competition. And that one, I knew she wanted to use me. And what was the name of the actress who played her younger sister? But she was incredible. And I don't know if you remember my character because it recurred a little bit.
Stacy Galena, the daughter.
Yeah. I thought she was gorgeous and funny, and the whole tenor of that was that they were living in an old folks home, and she moved in with her parents and started dating one of the other old folks, which was me. And I thought there were a lot of actresses who might say, I don't want to date this old guy, but she kind of loved it, both in the show and in person. So it was a lot of fun. It was wonderful. But that was the show. That was the show where they fired David Steinberg.
Oh,
yeah, wow.
Interesting.
That was the one. And
Wow.
and I thought that they actually hurt themselves because I thought it was a much subtler, more nuanced show before they did that. And afterwards, I thought we went for rim shots and toilet paper jokes and things like that all of a sudden came in, and the producers loved it. I'm going to get myself into trouble, I hope. I'm in Kansas.
No, we're
I'm beyond the
Well,
reason.
Steinberg, he's a legend. I mean, come on. This is all good.
And hey, we're even critical of Seinfeld, so it's all good.
Yeah, speaking of critical, I mean, we haven't brought it up because it's not our favorite episode by any stretch. The Summer of George, your third episode. We're on the record as saying it's not a great episode. We don't like what they do to George Costanza, the character, in the later years, and then that's a prime example of that. But some people like that. It's just a different kind of show at that point. But it did have a lot of guest stars on, Raquel Welch and Amanda Peet, Molly Shannon. Your, like you said, your callback to the invitations was classic at the end.
And but that's also the episode that I wanted to rewrite the scene because
yes, exactly. Do you recall what exactly was that you didn't like that you wanted to rewrite? Like what the tone was, or like that, or just an overall
not exactly
sense?
What I wanted. The scene that I wrote
Uh-huh.
tied more into the relationship of George and I.
Got it.
And less into delivering funny lines.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And but as I said, I never handed it in because
yeah, you didn't want to be.
That's a good way to disappear, Victor.
Right, exactly. It's funny too because you had three season finales you were in, which are kind of the end of a season. They really promote it. It's a big episode. So the invitations and the Summer of George were both season finales, and obviously the finale was a season finale. So I thought that was interesting. I don't know if you're kind of even aware of that when those things aired, but
only that as it was emerging and continued to emerge after the show closed.
Right.
They considered to me to be lucky. I considered myself to be lucky because I got that work. And by the way, the nature of Hollywood was such that the fact that I was on Seinfeld got me work.
Right.
I mean, they didn't really know what actors do, but they did know if you're on a hit show, that makes you a more important person. And Seinfeld became a big hit show, and so I became more easily castable. And
right.
pay my mortgage and feed my children.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, Victor. So you talked about earlier, you never really watched Seinfeld. You were, your mid to late 40s at that point. Were there any, I don't know, nerves kind of going into that? Or were you kind of loosey-goosey, like, all right, this is just another sitcom? I know you watched a couple episodes to catch up, but you didn't really, did you kind of know the bigger scope, and Thursday night it was kind of a big deal, or did you not approach it that way?
Do you know in front of you what was the year of
93.
93 was a junior mint,
okay, so
your first one.
so I wasn't in my mid 40s. I was 54, and I had gotten married.
Wow, it looks like his man.
Hey, you never want to. I didn't want to.
I used to lie about my age constantly for years and years and years and years. But now I'm here, and 2 years ago I decided to come out. And I had planted phony years. If you go on IMDb, I worked very, very hard at getting all these phony dates out there.
That's great.
Yeah. So.
Hey, Victor, I'm 25 for the record, so there we go.
That's right, because it said I was born in 47 on IMDb, but I was born in 39. Right. So, but the thing was, I was a New Yorker. I thought, right. Television. I want the paycheck, That didn't matter to me nearly as much as, as I said, I came to Hollywood in a play. And then I joined a theater company called The Echo, and we would do these shows in 100-seat houses, and that's what I cared about. So I wanted to get the job. I wanted to be liked. I wanted to be respected. I wanted to learn the craft. But frankly, as I watched other people, I thought, I don't really know what I'm doing like some of the other people do. I'm doing my best. I'm working hard at it. I wanted to know. But I thought some people understood the craft of television a lot better than I did. And it even became more pronounced in features.
Interesting.
When I'd go looking at the dailies, and I think, oh, I was dynamite in that scene, and then I'd see the daily and go, no, I sucked.
Oh man. Listen, I got a question for you though on this one too. You were in season 4, right? Season 7, season 8, and season 9. Did you go to all of the rap parties for all those seasons? And if you did, which was the most fun?
I don't think I went to any of them. I'm not sure. I'm trying to think.
There had to be something at the finale that was a kind of a party time, no?
As I remember, it was I was
Somber.
in part 1. I was in part 1.
Okay.
So it shot a whole nother, because I think they took 2 weeks to do each part of the finale, because those weren't they each hour?
Oh wow, yeah, they were, yeah.
So by the time the rap party came along, I was off and running to something else.
Right.
Yeah.
Favorite episode you were in, Victor, of Seinfeld?
For me, probably, it would be one of the first two. I'm trying to think if it's Invitations or Junior Mint. Probably Junior Mint, because if I say Junior Mint, everybody knows those two.
Right.
Now, when you're in Kansas, you get a lot of glamour points for having been in Seinfeld, and those are the two. When if I say hi, and they say, what do you do for a living? I say, well, I was an actor. Oh, did you ever, yeah, I was on Seinfeld. What one? And if I say those two, then it goes, oh, wow. Hey, Edna, remember this guy?
Yeah, I mean, all your scenes, while they're supposed to be, not dark, but I mean, you're delivering bad news in most of them, except, and the junior major's kind of delivering good news. But as O'Hara mentioned earlier, it just seems like in all of your scenes, the cast is genuinely having a good time. I mean, if you rewatch the Junior Mints, when George is talking about buying the art and looking at the triangles, and then he kisses George on the head, they look like they're really laughing. And I noticed at the end of the Invitations, when you're talking to George, you can see Julie with her head down. Looks like she's laughing. It looks like Jerry's almost laughing. Like, it just seemed like there was just so much fun on the set. And like you said, you were the good luck charm. I'm guessing they must have been having a blast with you.
It was one of those. I mean, I knew that people thought I was funny. I mean, I'm talking about the people in the cast. And that was important to me, because I wanted them to think I was funny. So I was proud of that. But I was also experienced enough to know not to show them that I was proud of that. just to let them think that I was innately funny rather than I was succeeding at being funny. But yeah, they did. They thought I was funny. That's why I got to be moved from being a surgeon to an emergency room doctor.
Yeah, well, listen, ER doctors can handle stuff, right? But I think, and it's your voice, right? It's such a comforting voice. I mean, so I think that's why you like playing a doctor. It makes a lot of sense. But you could just tell you had so much fun with it, and obviously, the other four, you could tell that they just enjoyed being in your presence. It was just like a kind of a comfort thing, and that's what kind of makes people smile.
It was a good time on that set, and not so much. Jerry was often in the producer's room, but among the others, and then as I said, ultimately I saw less and less of Julia, but both Michael and especially Jason were always around and always fun, and they thought I was a good luck charm. I thought they were a good luck charm too. Jason had a daughter 1 year older than mine. And so she went into preschool in a school in my neighborhood. And he constantly gave me advice about what to do with my kids. And also, gosh, from Forrest Trump, who's the actor who's very well known in military causes and everything, played his buddy in Forrest Gump.
Oh, Gary Sinise.
Yes. So
Yeah.
he had a child also in the same school, and so it gave me more standing.
Very cool.
I was in Hollywood trying to not even claw my way up, claw my way even. I mean, I had an agent who wanted me to start turning things down in favor of bigger billing and more money. And he said, the thing is that'll mean less work initially. And I remember saying, Stephen, you have to understand, I have a mortgage and I have a couple of kids, and I'm more fearful of being out of work than I am desirous of being a huge name. If the cost of becoming a star is risking starvation, I starved as a child. I don't want to go back. Let me be middle class. And I was blessed. I was able to be middle class.
Wow. Well said. And, we've been blessed because we got to watch you so much throughout the years. So we just want to thank you for all the work. Thanks for making us laugh. And
I ask you, my daughter asked me today, where will she be able to see this episode? Because how will
we'll send you the links, but it'll be on YouTube, and it'll be, iTunes, Spotify, everywhere you can get audio. If she wants to watch it, it'll be on YouTube.
When will you post it?
This will be out. Actually, this is not going to be out until early April, probably.
April.
Yeah, about 1, 2, 3, 4, about 6 weeks, where we kind of have a backlog. We kind of post these sporadically, but we'll definitely reach out. O'Hara will send you the links and everything.
Yeah, I'll send you the links as it goes live, and you could share it out. All good.
Terrific. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I want to watch it.
We're going to talk to one of your co-stars from the Junior Mint in a couple of weeks as well, Dolores. So there we go.
Oh, and I tell everybody, come to Kansas City in May. I'm doing Arthur Miller's The Price, and it's going to be really, really brilliant. And it's going to be the role of my life. And
that's great.
Wow.
I fought 5 years to get it on the stage, and come see it.
Congrats. That's great.
Congratulations.
That's great, Victor.
Yeah.
Well, this has been it's been a real treat, Victor. Thank you so much for your time, and best of luck.
Thanks for reaching out for me. I'm very flattered that you did, and good on you.
Thank you, Victor.
Thanks so much, Victor. Have a great night.
Have a great night.
Bye-bye.